Welcome, friends, to another edition of whatever this podcast is called at the moment in time, because I keep changing my mind. Um, I am joined by somebody I feel like I've known for my whole life. It's been a minute. Um, Katie, how you doing?
So good. And I'm so tickled at the continuous name change because I feel like I do that with the majority of my projects. It's like I set a name and then I'm like, ugh, hate it.
Mm,
Um, and so every couple of years, or every couple of days, months, whatever, just switch it out.
did
What's a name?
it's a name? Naming things is hard. Like,
It is hard.
there's some computer geek gag about that, but naming things is hard. Anyway, lest we digress into naming conventions. Um, you and
Wish
I
we
have
could.
known each other we've known each other for a good while.
Yeah.
But for anyone who doesn't know you and they're missing out, who are you and what do you do?
Oh my goodness. The who are you question is also an opportunity to spiral, which I won't take, but know that I could. My name is Katie Phillips. I am a presentation coach and communication consultant, and my goal with my work is to help people say what they want to say, when they want to say it, and how they want to say it. It comes out in a couple different modes, working with people one on one, helping them to either craft or deliver a presentation, or training and facilitating groups to figure out how they talk with each other and if they can do that better. I've committed my life to the art and science and fight of communication, and I've called it my one true professional love for a long time, and I mean that very deeply. So communication is where it's at for me. It comes public speaking, talking with each other, and also a lot of interview prep and interview practice.
Amazing. It's something that I think we all need more of is our communication muscle honing. So, what got you there? What got you to today in terms of your love of communication?
One of the first touch points I can remember is weirdly knowing me now, but being in youth group and just let that sit for a second. Being in youth group in high school, and they gave us the opportunity as kids to get up and speak in front of each other, and you could prepare these stories to share with one another. And ironically, or exactly in the pocket, it really was a spiritual experience for me to share a story in front of a group, to feel that connection with them, and then to have people later say, like, I remember this part of your story, it really meant a lot to me. And I just dug into that with everything I had. And I can remember other touch points, just giving speeches or presentations in school and feeling like this is where I'm supposed to be. The big turning point was sophomore year of college, and I took a class called relational communication. And the entire course was essentially saying that the way we build relationships is we communicate with each other. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, like you always are, but especially at 19. And I thought, I love people and I love speaking, so let's just do that. And it was just continuously chasing those moments ever since then. Any kind of speech I could get my hands on, speaking in public, talking the entire class, really just amping up that energy of being the person that was constantly speaking. And it took me a long time to learn that a lot of my job was listening. However, the beginning started with talking, and I just worked at it and worked at it, did everything I could. After college, I got this very fancy corporate communication job where I was on the executive level of a financial company as a entry level employee. So everyone else there was about double my age, and I was just trying to figure out how to speak to them in a way that made sense and connected us. That inspired a TEDx talk that I gave when I was 23 years old, which was a monumental moment for me. And as soon as I gave a TEDx talk at work, I became the speaker person. So I got thrown into all these opportunities to speak and to train and to work with people on communication. It was so inspiring that it made me quit my job, which was maybe not the company's ideal. But I knew every time I was in front of a room, every time I was teaching, every time I was facilitating, I knew. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And once you know what you're supposed to do, it's very hard to show up every day for something that is not that. You're like, I know I'm supposed to be a triangle, and I keep showing up in this square space, and it's not working. So I quit without a game plan, which I don't recommend as someone who often coaches people through career transitions. However, it did work. I started my consulting practice, speaking, training, and now I've been consulting for almost 10 years, which is bananas. And I feel very lucky and very fortunate to keep doing what I'm doing and to keep working with really magnificent people.
That's fantastic that you
Thank you.
came upon that experience.
Yes.
The word that's in my head at the moment is awareness.
Mm.
Kind of
Mm-hmm.
a very strong awareness of you, like in yourself. Like I'd hazard to say that like most people who are 18, 19, 20, they're not quite that switched on. I know I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like how, if you cast your mind back, like how did you maybe dial into that bit of you, or did you just absorb as you were going?
Let me tell you a fact about myself that is going to enlighten this moment. My father is a licensed business psychologist. My mom was a guidance counselor and then career coach. My sister is incredible and a scientist in the army. That's just me showing off. But my parents were these two people who my parents were these two people who taught us very early on what it
Mm.
was like to know yourself. And I liken it to being taught the Force by two expertly trained Jedi and not knowing what to do with it for a
Mm.
long time. So to know myself that well at that age was really me yearning to know myself and really wanting to understand what to do with this huge skill set that I was given. Like we were doing awareness exercises at the dinner table when I was 7 or 8, and I just was you just didn't know that's what you were doing, but you knew something was happening to your brain.
Mm.
And so for a long time, I just wanted to know, like, what is this weird set of skills that's been imparted to me? And also, what do I do with them? Because it feels like I should do something. So my chase towards awareness was just, let's understand what we've been given and let's figure this out, because otherwise I'm just going to be in peril for so long. So it started early for me from my family. I just kept chasing those experiences of how do I get to know myself better. And it makes me, I work with my dad now, which is honestly the best. And it makes me think of when I was working on my master's degree, I wrote this huge paper trying to explain how public speaking was an exercise in developing self-awareness. That's the key. But now you got to talk about it for like 12, 15 pages. And it was like the Charlie from It's Always Sunny meme with the strings and the magazine clips. And I'm just this is what it means to know yourself. And I went on for so long. And then I was talking to my dad about it. And he came up with this killer sentence, which is your presentation style is the observable demonstration of your self-awareness. The way you speak is the observable demonstration of how well you know yourself. And it infuriated me that he took a sentence when I took 12 pages, but that's what it is to work with someone who knows what they're doing so well. But I think I've always been seeking that self-awareness because I so want to know myself so that I can, what I've learned is the more I'm myself, the more others are themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that freedom is really critical.
That's the word, freedom,
Yes. Yeah.
right there. 'Cause
Yes.
you know when your parents tell you stuff, and especially I
Yeah.
imagine having them coming at you from both sides in the nicest possible way. Like,
Truly.
did
Well
you not?
said.
Did you not just want to push back?
Uh, I really just wanted to play. I wanted to be a part of it. And
Okay.
I went that direction more. I was like, yeah, I understand this too. And I had no idea.
Mm. Now, I guess I'm going to pull that freedom thread for a moment, because I think as self-employed people, we are,
Hmm.
and you and I have spoken about this at length before. No one else is going to be privy to that conversation, but it's just for me and you.
We
But
know what
we
happened.
know what happened. But the freedom thing, right?
Yeah.
And being able to show up as you, as you've kind of developed along your consultancy journey, your business journey, like how have you approached that freedom as a tool, I guess, strategic freedom almost.
Hmm. Strategic freedom is a good phrase. You should write that one down. Keep that one. It's a keeper. How do I use freedom strategically? I, as a facilitator, use it as an ability to give options and choices to the people that I'm talking to. I try to tap back into my 5.5 years in the corporate environment. That's often where I train and facilitate, is with corporate. And I remember, like, there are rules and there are expectations, and even things down to we have to use this font in our PowerPoints. There's really specific set of rules. So I go in very empathetically and I say, there are these set of rules. Also, what can you do within those confines? The idea that the structure around you could also be the key that gets you out of that headspace is something I try to play with a lot.
Mm.
And when I think about the very traditional presentation skills trainings that I do for corporate environments, I try to add things in like, let's remember that any presentation is a choice. And by that I mean it's my choice to speak, but also as a group of listeners, it's your choice to listen. And if at any point you hate what I'm saying, you can leave. That is always an option. And if at any point as a speaker, if I feel really uncomfortable with your questions, I can also leave. I think we forget that because there's such a social construct with presentations. Someone's speaking, I have to sit through this. What if they're just hitting these wrong notes? What if they're racist or sexist or homophobic? What if they're just completely wrong? You can push back and you're also allowed to leave. And so I just try to make sure people remember that, because autonomy is one of my core values. It is what makes me a very stubborn student. It is what I think makes me a very good consultant. And it also helps me as I coach others. I want everyone to know that they can be there, they can not be there. And if we know those two choices are on the table, then let's take these opportunities to speak very seriously and sincerely. Beyond that, I try to remind people that they are free to be themselves as much as possible, because every bit of research shows that audiences connect with speakers who are the most authentic more than perfect. In fact, when someone speaks perfectly, and by that I mean they use all the right hand gestures, they use the right intonation. When it's too perfect, we hate it. We actually get turned off by it. But if you are yourself and you're authentic and you're clued into what that means, the more you know yourself, the more you can connect with other people.
Mm.
And so the more I remind people, like, if you're talking about something you're excited about, let's be excited.
Yeah.
And if this sucks, let's talk about it like it sucks. Let's put the right tone behind what we're saying, the right emotional energy behind it, so that people realize that they can trust you.
Another strong word there, the trust.
Truly.
Because I think that when people come to us, they do have a certain degree of expectation that they can trust you.
Yes.
They come to you as an expert in presenting and communication, same as they would come to me as a expert in
Yeah.
things.
A lot of stuff.
A
A
lot
lot
of
of
a lot of
things.
stuff. And we don't want to sort of inadvertently break that trust by showing up in the wrong way.
Correct.
I wonder, and this is a bit of a left field thought, but you mentioned you've done a TED talk.
Oh God.
Do
Yeah.
you feel maybe that since like the TED ecosystem has become so well known. Do you feel it might be setting people up for a fall, or setting a false barrier, or even a false ceiling for how people can show up to communicate and share their knowledge and their expertise?
Well, let me ask, what expectation do you think, or do you perceive TED Talks giving people?
Great question back. I think when we see the speakers, right, they are refined,
Mm,
they are
yeah.
polished. I mean, forget the surround, the aesthetic. The presentation of TED content is glorious,
Hmm.
regardless of if it's a local TEDx, presenting to 15 people in a room or thousands of people in an auditorium. The presentation of the content is glorious. But there's a certain sensibility to that style of content which is now so well, it, it's made so accessible that it's almost like that's the bar by which a presentation is, delivered and set, so
Hmm.
that anybody, just shooting a little lunch and learn on their iPhone, or or just
Yeah.
recording a podcast of themselves on their laptop speaker, there's the constant cloud of, we're not good enough to communicate what we want and what we love and what we're experts in.
Yeah.
How does that show up, maybe with the kind of people that you work with?
What I see often is a sense of pushback, and the pushback comes in the sentence, "I'm just not a speaker." And my goal then is to remind people of two things. The first is that speaking is a skill, it is not an inherent trait. The second is that the way that you speak is far and away better than speaking to whatever level of perfection you think exists. This internal turmoil of, do we speak perfectly or do we speak as ourselves, inspired me to build and create an assessment called the Marshall Speaking Style Indicator. And what that assessment does is it allows you to take it either as an individual or a 360, and you can tell what kind of speaking style you line up with, one of 10 that I've discovered through years of experience and research. The goal is to remind people that you have so many skills in this specific style that you may not even know about, that aren't anything like whatever perfect speaker you're imagining in your head. If it's a politician, if it's a TED speaker, if it's a social media superstar who seems to always get a million views or what have you, you don't have to be that, but you do have to know and celebrate yourself. One of the things I see from TED Talks is people try to do this drop-in technique. I did it in mine because I was 23, and we love her. We love that 23-year-old, but she was still learning. The drop-in technique is like this: you get up to the front of the room and you kind of like posture, and you say something like, "It's 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, and I've just finished eating with my family, and we are talking about everything." And you just kind of drop into the story without letting anyone know you're telling a story. And it's so impactful, I think, in the TED experience, because we all agree I'm about to watch a presenter. But if you try that shit in like your Monday stand-up meeting, it's going to be so weird.
Hmm.
So speaking also is contextual. You can do that when everyone knows they're coming to see you speak. You're a presenter, you're getting on the stage. It's already, all those context lines are already met. But when you want to tell a story to your colleagues, when you want to tell a story in an interview, it is so helpful to say something simple like, "Let me tell you a story. So it's 7 p.m. I'm sitting there with my family. We're eating dinner and we're talking about everything." And now it's not just me posturing or being anything other than someone speaking to you. So those are some of the things that I see with the TED impact. They give such good examples of people speaking and presenting authentically and
Mm-hmm.
really well. They give a great story. There is also an influence of, how am I ever going to reach that? And most of those TED speakers are working with people like me. and they are being organized and practiced with someone else in the room with them. They don't just arrive that way. And then the second is realizing two contexts. The first is the way that you speak is best. And then the second is where you're speaking impacts how you're speaking.
Where you're speaking impacts how you're speaking.
Big time.
Something, maybe a slight connotation with what you sort of said in that was that when you're speaking to people,
yes,
maybe not speaking with people.
That's really well said.
So you and I, we're talking to one another now.
Yeah.
We're speaking with each other. We're having a conversation.
Yes.
But when you are in your Monday stand-up, you're in your board meeting, you're in your client presentation, you are in your pitch, you're in your sales call one-to-one.
Yeah.
At some point, you are going to need to speak to somebody.
Yes.
How maybe can somebody... We're getting into practical stuff for a second. I mean, how can somebody sort of... Is there any ways that you work with people to help them shift mode? To help them learn the skills of talking to versus talking with? Because personally, I believe that everything can be conversational.
Yes.
100%. Because
Agreed.
It just puts you on the table. But for those who it doesn't come naturally to, how do you get them there?
Excitingly enough, the ideal is to bring the conversation into the presentation. The speaking to is essentially a monologue. I'm speaking one to a group. And then in a conversation or more, it's a dialogue. How do you bring dialogical elements into the monologue space? That is the goal. How do we make this? I shot for it and I am proud of myself. Thank you. How do we bring conversational elements into the presentation? There's a couple ways. The first is you can bring in an actual Q&A into your presentation, meaning I'm going to summarize what I just said. So I've just talked about A, B, and C. What questions do you have about A, B, and C? And that front loading is really important because if you just stop and say, what questions do you have? It's going to take people a while. Second, if you don't want to do that, you can ask yourselves the question as the speaker and then answer it. So I've just shared with you these numbers. Do these numbers mean that we can't reach it by March? No, we can certainly still reach it by March. You can't do that a lot because that's going to get on people's nerves, but you can do it a little bit. Everything in balance. The other is story. And story is underutilized and I think underestimated, particularly in business sectors. It feels better to show up with these hard-hitting facts of we've got these numbers, we have these statistics, we have these expectations, and that's all well and good. But the human brain responds to story in a way it will never respond to facts. If you can tell the story of how you got those numbers, or if you can encourage people to imagine what it would be like if we hit this milestone together, that story is going to bring people in a way that you just saying, we have to hit this goal never will. So it's questions either of the group or yourself. It's story. And I think the other is, this might be weird, is honesty. And not honesty in the sense of, you've probably seen this. Someone's presenting and they're clicking through their slides and they go, oh, that slide's not supposed to be there. Anyway, like no one cares. I don't care if your slide's supposed to be there. I wouldn't know otherwise. Honesty in the sense of, I'm so excited about this. I'm a little apprehensive about this. I can understand why there's worry. Any kind of honesty around the emotion that you may be feeling is going to make people be there with you. You don't have to overshare. Like, we barely brought this product to launch, by the skin of our teeth. Like, that's fine. I don't really care. But if you tell me about how happy you are to see this in the store, now I really care. So those are some ways you can bring people in, even if it's just you talking to them instead of with them. The goal is to make it feel like they're with you as much as you can.
It makes everything, the message, the concept, the content, makes you more accessible, right?
Agreed.
And I think when when
Yeah,
we're selling, especially when we're selling, we need to be accessible,
truly. Yeah, they're buying into you, not just the thing. And
right?
I will say, yeah, to circle back to TED, that was one of the big differences. Is now we don't just listen to speakers, we watch them.
Yes,
And the more open you seem, physically, vocally, presentation wise, the more people are going to feel connected to you.
100%. It's performative.
Yes. Yeah, it really long ago it used to just be over the radio, and then it turned into typically one guy behind a podium, and then we got rid of the podium, and as soon as we got rid of the podium, this is so nerdy. I work on this a lot. As soon as that podium went away, the entire game shifted.
Yeah.
And now you have to walk across the stage and you have to pause. You have to use your legs and your hands while remembering what you want to talk about, while making eye contact, while thinking about your tone. And then that also became more modernized with the iPhone or the phone in general or the computer. Now we're recorded, and how do you push yourself through
Mm,
those screens? So it's a lot more emoting than I think people give it credit for. And the more honest you can be with that emotion, the better it's going to come through.
truthful. Very much so. I know loads of thoughts swirling around
Yeah.
that particular thing because I think it's as you talked before about kind of devices that are overused, and when we talk about the podium removed,
Yes.
my brain immediately goes to Steve Jobs, right?
Yes. Yep.
And not thinking
Yeah.
about the rich white guy who's well known and everything, but is
Yeah.
him as an orator and as a presenter. Ah, man, he could hold a room.
Truly.
He could hold a room by not doing very much, and I think this is the thing. It's the hand gestures, the pauses, the change in cadence when he's talking. It delivers the message, but it's still always about the message.
Yes.
So, podium or not, radio play or not, videoed, high
Hmm.
tech gizmos and gadgets, it's still content first. You are just the vehicle for that content.
You are the messenger of the message, and you have a duty to your audience and your message.
Absolutely. Because how your message is perceived, you can't control that
No,
at all.
that is something that I think winds people up. You can't control how people take it.
No.
One of, oddly enough, again, TED, which stays with me every day. One of my favorite TED Talks is from Nancy Duarte, and she, I think, gave two, but the one I'm thinking of is essentially how to give a great speech. And she's got a lot of good pointers, but my favorite is this idea that often when we speak, we think that we are the hero and we're going to save the room. And that's a lot of pressure. And
Yes.
I definitely spoke that way when I first started, and I was doing all of my, pro bono workshops and all my for free presentations that, we're all for exposure. And I know, just a small head shake for that.
Sorry, it's an audio medium.
Awful.
I'm shaking my head at the exposure conversation. Sorry.
So all that exposure that I got to eat, I definitely started that way. And what Nancy George shares, is that you are not the hero. The room is full of heroes, and you are the teacher. And your goal is to help these heroes leave the room a little bit better than when they arrived. And if they can leave a little bit better, they can go save the day in their worlds. And that's the point. You are not Luke Skywalker. You are not Frodo. You are not Aragorn, even, certainly. You are always Yoda, uh, Gandalf. You're the teacher. And you're not out there on the front lines. They are. As soon as I heard that, I was able to shift everything about the way I spoke, and I was able to let go of so much stuff that was keeping me from being effective.
Mm,
Because suddenly it was no longer about if I was cool or interesting or funny. None of that mattered. What mattered was, am I helping this room of people? And anything else that I do just has to be in service to being helpful. And it releases a lot of pressure. It allows you to come to the truth of yourself, and it allows your room to actually do something with what you say. Because who cares if you're perfect? That doesn't help me. I don't care if you're the best at this. How do I become the best at this? So that's a big shift. How do you just help the people in the room? It's really not about you. It's a very odd dichotomy, public speaking. It's about you because you're speaking, but it's not about you because you're not speaking for yourself.
It's a really interesting idea to kind of rein it in to where we are in
Sure.
2024.
Isn't that such a weird year to
I
say?
know. I nearly said 2023.
Yeah, I get
Very
it.
nearly went there. Um, like we're all about networking. We're all about meeting people. We're all
Yeah,
about just quote unquote putting ourselves out there. And we end up having to talk about ourselves a lot.
yeah,
Culturally, that's hard as shit. Like, we
yeah,
don't want to talk about ourselves. We are told that it is
yeah.
selfish and it, it's a disservice
Hmm.
to others, right? By going, oh, hi, I'm this person, I do this, such and such and
Yeah,
such, me, me, me.
yeah,
But maybe taking that idea that actually you are the servant of the message and the
yeah,
servant of the person you are talking to. You're there to educate them, then shut up and get out of there
yeah,
and let them do what they need with it.
yeah.
Maybe it's something for everyone to acknowledge to empower them a little bit. I mean, there's a question in there.
Hmm.
How do you help people overcome the I mustn't talk about myself too much roadblock?
I start by relating to it. And for me, it wasn't, I mustn't talk about myself. It's, I just really don't want to. Uh, I don't want you to know that about me. I'm pretty guarded at first. I keep a heavy shield, so I get it. And what I try to offer people is come up with a story bank. Come up with, you know, I don't know, 3 to 7 stories that you'd be willing to share with anybody. Keep those in your back pocket. And when you are connecting with someone else, ask them questions, figure them out, learn more about them. But there is a delicate balance between being interested and being an investigative reporter. No one wants to be like, tell me everything about yourself and, let me search around the rooms of the house of your brain. No one likes that. But everyone wants to share a story about themselves. So if you can get someone else sharing a story, what you have to be ready for is to reciprocate a bit to show that you're both safe in this territory. So it's not about, let me tell you every dark or sparkling thing about me. It's just, let me be a human connecting with you. And that connection is what matters. So I think it's choosing what to share about yourself in a way that makes you feel safe and in a way that lets the other person know that you are also a functioning, operating human
Mm,
who has had experiences.
absolutely. I guess there's a nature of reading the room on that
100%. Yeah.
because like you want to share a story, but you might not share that story at that time
With that
with
person.
that person
Uh-huh.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um,
And the wildest thing about communication is sometimes you don't know until you're doing it. You don't know a story is bombing until you're telling it. I have
mhm.
this deeply passionate and important story to me about how I chased after the perfect axe throwing match, which I think I've talked to you about. And I've tried to tell it multiple times, and each time it's just super bomb. And I'm like, you guys don't get how important this is. And it just doesn't work. So there are some stories that you don't know aren't going to work until you're saying them out loud, which is fine. That's part of what I love about communication is it's not 100% game. You hit 50 and you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I like that. The 50% is, you can't win them all.
No.
You can't win them all. But the
Mm,
ones you do, when you really stick the landing,
such a good feeling.
oh yeah. It really is. It really is. I had a I had one of those questions. There it is. It's come back. It's come back. This is where
It
people
always
get to
does.
see my professionalism on show. We've talked a lot about what I will term as outbound communication.
Cool.
presentation
Yeah.
and delivering a message. How do you help people, and if you do help people do this, because it's a completely different skill set, how do you help them flip it the other way so that they can communicate with question?
How do we operate as the listener actively, essentially?
Effectively, yes.
Mm.
Because I mean, because that's another skill set in its own
Yes, it
right. But
is.
do you work with people to help them ask better questions, to
Yeah.
prime an audience to feed back? Like, how does that show up in what you do?
I've got both small fun facts that help and also an encouragement for practice. In another lifetime, I created a training around networking. And the thing was, it was a networking event where you got to meet people and we talked about how to connect with people better. So you're doing the thing while learning about the thing. And some of the things we reminded people are first, to make it about them, not you. You don't have to, it just in parallel with public speaking, you don't have to roll up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm Katie. I'm amazing at what I do. I'm the best there's ever been. And if anyone says differently, then I will fight them barehanded." You don't have to do that. You can just say, "Hey, I'm Katie. How is your day going?" It What is fascinating is that it's always the small lines that get you to where you want to go. There's
Mm.
this big hot take laden push for eradicating small talk. But you and I both know if someone rolled up to you and was like, "Hi, I'm Katie. Tell me about your just most difficult childhood experience." You're like, "Get out of my face." No one wants to do that. But if we can stair step to that, "How is your day going? What do you think about this networking event that we're at? Oh, you're missing your kids. Isn't it so funny how parenting teaches you about your own childhood? Have you had, do you remember any difficult memories that are now informing the way you parent?" Now we've built trust, which is again the core of what we're doing is freedom, trust, authenticity, those big words in
Mm.
action. So you start small, you make it about them, you ask them questions. And when you are asked a question, you finish and then you throw it back with another question. So, how is your day going? My day's going great. I did X, Y, and Z. I'm really pleased with this thing. How is your day going? Even, what's your favorite TV show? Oh, I'm really into this right now. Here's what I'm watching. What are you watching right now? Making it feel like a tennis match where we're going back and forth instead of just, now it's my responsibility to handle this entire conversation by myself. You want it to feel like we're going together. And the other fact to consider is that it takes the human brain roughly 7 seconds to come up with a question it didn't have before. When you are up there speaking and you want to bring people in, and so you stop and you very professionally say, talked about A, B, and C. What questions do you have? You got to hold. You got to hold, brother. You got to white knuckle that steering wheel and you got to breathe and you have to act like everything is fine. What happens a lot is speakers stop. They say, "Okay, do you have any questions?" "No questions." "Okay, great. I'll keep moving on." Your brain hasn't even switched because to ask a question is to be active, but to listen to a presentation is to be passive. So you've got to get your group or your conversation partner from passive into active mode. 7 seconds. Just breathe, you pause, you look around the room like everything's fine. Someone will ask something, and if not, you take it like it's fine. Say, "Okay, none right now, but we can come back to these if you have them." So a lot of it is trust, not just of the other person, but of yourself, and listening to what you hear, not just, you have to listen to what you hear and you have to listen to what is not being said. Because if you're speaking to people and you're seeing that tired body language, my God, who isn't tired these days? If you look around the room and people are just kind of, tilted, or they're just looking at the ground, or like three people have gotten up to get snacks or something, they want a break. Give them a break. Wouldn't you want a break? We're humans. We're all humans operating in a human experience. So just let people have their breaks, I think, is a final point. That it's
Mm.
not about you. It's not about you being bad at your job or this presentation sucks. People need a break.
People do need a break. We need a
Don't you?
we need a
I do.
break. Just
Yeah.
please. just testing the pause there.
Beautiful. I loved it.
To make the point, I guess, and this is not my platform for making a point, but for people who are listening, and this is something which I encourage in my clients when I coach them, especially around sales calls and facilitating things for their clients, you have got to get comfortable with the pause. Like 5 seconds of pause can feel like a lifetime. And just right there.
Hmm.
I,
I've got this whole mental shtick, this whole thing. I'm my own hot take, and it's that pauses are a luxury
mm-hmm.
often given to people when we know they're the speaker, we agree they're speaking, or we have very high trust, like you and I do, or they have some sense of hierarchical leadership. Anybody else, which is mostly the rest of us, can get that microphone taken like nothing,
Yeah.
just in a second. I It happens with your friends, with your family, when you're at work. These days, especially on virtual meetings, if you pause for too long, someone's going to jump in and say, like, did you freeze? Or I actually have a point and I have something I need to say. We just want to, we all have something to say. And so I think that the listening encouragement is one that you can build, like you were saying, as a listener. It's a really good skill to just let people have their space, to create the safe space where someone else just take their time. Like, you're in no rush. I'm not going anywhere. That's a really great practice. The other, it comes from a thing that I isn't so annoying. I want to say a thing that I read. It's from like an Instagram video. That's
Do
so
it.
embarrassing.
Bring it.
Let's just be open and honest. I want to say they were a researcher, but who's to tell these days? Their point was that sometimes we talk too quickly because we are afraid that people around us won't listen to us. And it comes from this long ago experience of childhood where we just got ran over when we were speaking. So you have people who never pause and who talk very quickly because they are deeply afraid they're not going to be heard and they're going to get ignored. They're going to get the moment taken from them. And I did think that resonated wherever the source came from, that there are moments in life where you're so sure that you're not going to be listened to that you just get it out as much as you can. It's incredible to me how much of our communication skills, or even the things that we do badly as speakers, comes from this place of just very much wanting to be seen and appreciated and to know that we're safe. And if you can know that, if you're someone like you and me, where we're holding space for others, where we're coaching, where we're teaching, if we can know that at the root of so much of this, public speaking anxiety, people talking too quickly, people not wanting to practice their presentation, people hire me to practice their presentations and delay it as much as they can. They'll tell me everything about themselves, everything about their presentation before they'll just do it. If we just keep in mind that everyone wants to be seen and acknowledged and made to feel safe, then that is where we start. And letting them have their pause allows them some leniency to get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then maybe you don't feel like you need to fill the air with another question.
Sometimes there is one. Sometimes there isn't a question. Sometimes it's just a line of affirmation. Like, yeah, I get that. That's fine. And I've had experiences with you when we've been in conversation where I can feel the other luxury, which is, being long-winded and just getting the whole story out. And I've felt you just giving that space and just going, oh my God, as someone who's normally asking the questions and creating the space, to feel like you can run free in a field because someone else is letting you do it's such a gift. So sometimes people ramble and sometimes they need to, and there's a time and a place for everything. But I think that giving people that space and letting them go when you have the opportunity is a very real kindness that may not always be what's happening in your professional environment because people have things to do and places to go.
Yep.
But when you can, I think that's why it's so great to work with someone like you and in that creative space with a coach because you sometimes your creativity just needs to be kind of untangled and
Mm.
that takes longer than just here's a direct answer, boss. I got you right now.
Yep. Feel that. Feel that. Just let it all go.
Yeah.
Just let it go. I have one question that I like to ask everybody who
Okay.
graces me with their presence on this little show.
Fun.
Since you began your self-employment journey, what's like the one big myth that you've busted for yourself?
Oh God. The biggest myth that I busted. I'm sure there's many. The one I can pull up from the depths right now is the idea that as a self-employed person running your own business or practice, that your hours should be exactly congruent with the hours you held in-house somewhere. So, in my corporate job, I worked 8 to 5 or whatever, 8 to 6, what have you. And when I first started, I really felt like I was failing, like I was lazy, like I was doing something wrong because my hours would be more like I'd work like 10 to 2 and then go get groceries or something and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe take a break and then come back and work like, 7 to 9 or something. Or maybe you just have one call that day, or maybe you have no calls that day. And in those moments, I really felt like I was missing something, like I was doing something horribly wrong. But then there would be weeks where I would have 4 to 5 calls a day. And even that, I'm sure in the average business person's world right now doesn't sound like a lot. But when you're the one coaching or facilitating 4 or 5 times for 4 to 5 hours, it feels like you're doing 10 to 12. And there'd be days where I would just stack the day completely and I would be like, this sucks. I don't like this either.
Mm.
So I think the biggest myth is that it has to look like what it looks like in-house. And it doesn't. It's not supposed to. It, for me, is very much a sprint style business where next week I'll be traveling all week for trainings and facilitations. And then I'll have another off week to kind of recoup. And then I'll have just like a slate of calls and trainings I'm going to do virtually. So it's more sprint style than it is every day is the same hours. That was a big one for me.
So
What about you?
Well,
Have you answered this?
I have down the line, and I think I would relate heavily to that, and I think as many other people would, that the world we build for ourselves does not need to be bound by any traditional constraint.
It's so much better said. Yeah, you're building it. You're
You are
building
building
it.
it is your thing. You communicate it as you want to do it. You show up as you want to do it. Nobody else can tell you what good looks like or what right is in that mode, you know. And then we need to understand them and communicate back with them and get
Yeah,
it working
you're
on their terms.
you're especially with client work. You're an outdoor cat visiting for a little bit, and then you're going to go back out into the wild. So whatever that looks like for you is what it looks like for you.
Mm, absolutely. I think you and I are both very much outdoor cats now.
Absolutely.
We are. We are very much the outdoor cats. And on that note, before we
Yes,
digress into pet chat, because
which we could
we could a lot.
immediately. I'm ready.
Here for it. My cats have gone somewhere else, which is a good job. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
holding this space with me and sharing your
Likewise.
knowledge, your expertise. I think there's going to be so much in here which people will be able to learn from, both conceptually and practically.
Hopefully. Good.
Because if there's one thing that we all need to do a little better, is communicate.
Agreed.
So, for people who may want to learn more about you or work with you on their
Yes.
communication, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you for Thank you for having me. Thanks for asking. If you want to get in touch with me, I would go to my website, which is communicationxconsulting.com. It's going to have an email button. Would love to talk to you that way. I want to encourage you to find me on LinkedIn if you would like, although I've done this before and I'm weirdly hard to find. But it should say Katie Phillips, comma, m.ed, because I am very proud of that master's degree. If you would like to see pictures of my cats, you can find me on Instagram at superkp2. And if none of that works for you and you're like me and you need the simplest and easiest way to find something, my email is kpcommunicates@gmail.com. So Katie Phillips communicates at gmail.com.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All the links will be in the show notes.
Lovely.
Everyone will be there for you. Hey, thank you so much.
This was a blast. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.